Welcome to Human Skills Project, where me and my friend Ted Mouradian, we talk about a lot of the things about how to develop human skills to lead peacefully with yourself and people around you. As I say usually, Ted, how would you introduce yourself to people who don't know you and know your work?
Well, I'm an author. I've written four books. I'm president of the 2% Factor and a relationship management consultant. I deal with how to eliminate conflict and stress in your life and how to neutralize your life
Mhm.
against the 2%ers who want to destroy it.
Right. And can you remind us one more time, who are the two percenters?
The 2%ers, they're the people who will pick up a gun and shoot you no matter what the rules are.
Mhm.
These are the bullies. These are the people with low self esteem, the narcissists. This is
Mhm.
Uncle Louie who comes over at Christmas and knocks down the Christmas tree. This is the person you fight against about their religion, the
Mhm.
gang leaders, um, people with low self esteem because they have to make you lower than them in order to prop themselves up. So that's the 2%. And the problem is, our whole society is run by them. We have 100 kilometer speed limits because 2% can't drive. We go through the beepy things in the store because 2% steal.
Mhm.
You won't pick somebody on the side of the road because 2% mug. And I
Mhm.
can go on and on and on. Every rule we have in society is based on the 2%.
Mhm.
And the silly part is all we have to do is neutralize their effect on us and not make another rule.
Right. Here's we talked about this book particularly, Professor Brian Klass's book, Corruptible, where he identifies it that we live in a social system around the world that where it rewards the two percenters for being two percenters, and that how they rise up in this corporate ladders or the political ladders, and it's the Machiavellians, it's the bullies who eventually rise to the power, right? Um,
That's because
so
we let them. That's because we let them.
right, and now we, you said that a lot of these people they do this destructive, this horrible things because of their low self-esteem, and we said in the last episode that we will talk about the penalty of not being our true self, and I like to phrase it this way, that if you are not your true self will come at you with vengeance. um, how in the Western social language, what we call middle age crisis, a lot of counselors, social psychologists will tell you that we have ignored our true self for so long, and that the true self has waited. And when it cannot take no longer, we reach in our 40s, mid 40s, our 50s, it comes back at us and everything crumbles.
I agree. And that's probably why a lot of people are into drugs and alcoholism. And it's worse nowadays than it was
Mhm.
before.
Mhm.
Because again, we talked about social media. So
Mhm.
this pressure to be a certain way, this
Mhm.
pressure not to be a certain way.
Mhm.
So there's both of that.
Right.
So when you don't know who you are, or you have a difficult time being what they want you to be,
Mhm.
that's when alcoholism, drug abuse,
Mhm.
addictions occur.
Mhm.
And as we talked earlier, that snake oil salesperson who comes along and says, "I can fix you, I can save you," and
Mhm.
you jump at that,
Mhm.
and because there's something in here that says, I this isn't right for me, but I don't know how to fix it,
Right.
because I still go back to the thing because we've made the 2% or 98%.
Mhm.
This happens a lot with my friends who, when they want to come out of the closet, I'll say, you know, you'll have to come out at your time, but I can tell you that once you come out, you're going to go, oh my God, why didn't I do that 20 years earlier?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
people I know, because my company, we involved in having people get career adjustments.
Mhm.
That's an easy way to say that, they get fired. But
Mhm.
I fired some people or been in a position to be part of that process, and they're angry at first, and then inadvertently we'll get a phone call, or I'll meet them on the street 6 months, a year later. That was the best thing that happened to me, because now I can be me. I was angry where I was before.
Right. Ted, obviously, we can talk about our own experiences. because we have the authority to do that. In your life, can you give us one or two examples, maybe in your early teen or 20s, when you felt that you were betraying your true self and it came back at you with vengeance?
That's hard to say because it's funny because I've always been what I would consider truly Ted. I
Hmm.
mean, what came back from me, come back to haunt me, I guess, because I had a good teenager years, and I mean, we were very poor as a family, and but my high school and that I was part of the in crowd,
Hmm.
and maybe that fits into our conversation because I did not realize that I was gay when I was a teenager because I fit so well into and became part of. I was captain of the football team. I was a gold medal oarsman. I was on the student council.
Hmm.
Um, so at that point, it didn't. But I think what happened is I was one of those guys. That's why what I write and what I talk about is so poignant because I lived it. I fell in line. Um, but I also had something at that point when I met my wife at 19. We got engaged at 20, got married at 21. And at that point, I thought, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. But there was something that didn't quite feel it. I can remember some family functions or get-togethers, Christmas or that. I sometimes felt that I was up in the corner of the room looking down on everybody else, including myself, that I didn't quite fit. And so at that point, now remember, we're talking about the 50s and 60s. There wasn't the information we had then. There
Hmm.
wasn't the acceptance we had then. So, but once I realized true self, that happened. Now, throughout my career and even doing what I've done, have I made some um, blunders? Yes.
Hmm.
Have they come back to haunt me? Yes. But do I consider them blunders at the time? Because no, at the time I did whatever I did. And this is interesting about the 2%. At the time I did whatever I did, I honestly believed I was right. Because 2%ers honestly believe they are right.
Yeah, I mean, I think your work, I mean, this particular tenet of your model, that people do what they do at the time they do, they think they're right, 100% in their mind, they're right. And it can be backed up by a Nobel laureate scholar, Herbert Simon in 1978 got a Nobel Prize for a concept called bounded rationality, that humans always make decisions. We say, particularly in neoclassical economics, it was believed in the beginning that humans are rational agents, they make rational decisions, but no, it is impossible to make rational decisions because you take decisions based on the information that you have, and you have always limited information. Hence, there will always be a possibility of that decisions that we make are incomplete. For me, I think what came, not I know what came, um, like you, maybe not like you. Uh, I was born in a very poor family, extremely poor family, starvation and all of that. So for me, I had no other way to escape poverty other than studying. So academia, studies were my means through which I could escape
Hmm.
starvation. I did it. But because we are a huge family, like 11 siblings, what I did while I was working as a high school teacher, I felt strongly that I have the capacity to be an academic, but I could not. I was working as a teacher. I imposed my innate desire to be an academic onto my younger siblings. And that was disastrous because this is not their tune. This is
That's
not
right.
their tune. They don't want to be. And then later I apologized and I said, look, my experience was as such that through academia, I did it. But now I'm not starving. I am living in one of the most richest nations in the world. I'm a Canadian citizen now. So, no, I'm not starving. But I think that I would not impose my decision to be a researcher, to be an academic onto my children. I don't want my three boys to become academic because I am academic.
That's right.
So I tell them that know your true self. See, it came back to me with vengeance when I was doing routine, boring work. I was going to work, I was hardly using my brain, like hardly using my brain. And not using your brain, your true self insight was in the beginning, the true self when we're young, it bubbles. It says that, maybe you are different. But when you ignore it for too long, it explodes. It creates
Or,
an crisis. Yeah.
or do you think it can become smothered to where? Because I've asked some people
Mhm.
over times who are they're not happy with who they are, where they are. So I
Mhm.
would say, if money is no object,
Mhm.
what would you be? What would you do?
Mhm.
Most people
Mhm.
can't answer that question
Mhm.
because I think at younger ages,
Mhm.
they've been scripted to believe whatever it is they wanted to do, they could never do it.
Mhm.
And so when I say, what would you like to be?
Mhm.
I don't know what I'd like to be
Mhm.
because that's pounded out of us to be not our true self, but to
Mhm.
be the self that others want us to be.
Right. And then when you said that not to be our true self, and by the way, here's a beautiful, beautiful observation. And I'm like, oh my God. Um, Todd Rose, a Harvard professor, has written a recently book. It's called The Collective Illusion. A lot of the times, Todd Rose thinks that we do things, and this fits into your model directly. We think that 98% wants us to be this.
That's right.
So it is our perception that people around us want us to be, I don't know, an accountant or these or that. But if you go and exam, and Ted, I love you for saying this, 98% people don't care. They don't care. Because they don't care, in other words, okay, would it be mischaracterized if I say that 98% people are indifferent to what color of clothes you wear, what preference of food that you eat,
That's
who do
probably
you
a
sleep
better
with?
word than that's probably a better word than they don't care.
Yeah,
Indifferent,
indifferent.
because it's not bothering me, it's not enhancing my life, it's not taking away from my life. You
Mhm,
know, you we may and I'm sure we've all done this. You'll be at a shopping mall, someone will go by where which is what you might consider inappropriate dress.
mhm, mhm,
And then you just shake your head and you go, "Whoa, I would never wear something like that." But
mhm.
you wouldn't be visceral towards them and approach them and say anything. So that's that 98%.
Right.
Indifferent. I like that. I like that. Indifferent.
Yeah.
I'm going to start
So,
using it instead of don't care.
right,
Yeah.
right. So they're indifferent. And here is the thing, Todd Rose, he argues that, and I think this enormous social phenomena probably last 10, 20 years is that to speak always politically correctly. I'm not saying that speeches don't have capacity to decimate one's spirit or hurt somebody, but when we are overtly censoring ourselves, every single word we're sending through supposed, or we perceive that is this politically correct to say, then what happens? We don't express ourselves at all. And Todd Rose is saying that when we honestly disagree is better than when we dishonestly agree.
I agree 100% because that's part of
Mhm,
what we teach. I just want to do Ted. Now I'll be saying this throughout all of our stuff. All I want to be is Ted.
mhm,
However Ted manifests himself in this world, he wants
mhm,
to be Ted. I want to be that flower. I want to be that tree. I want to be me.
mhm,
Simply that. I've come to the conclusion that we are in society today harming our sense of self, harming our ability to be that true self
mhm,
by the overly sensitive people who are too politically correct.
mhm,
That's that 2% on the left, as dangerous as the 2% on the right.
mhm,
And I believe, though, that we have to be very politically sensitive.
mhm,
Like, I know what words not to use,
mhm,
but if I think something is funny,
mhm,
right,
mhm,
I'm going to express that That's funny.
Hmm.
And so, oh, that's appropriate, Ted. You shouldn't have said that.
Hmm.
Well, then the person who I directed that to, who I think is funny,
Hmm.
who would know me as a friend, would know that tenet two, I can't do harm. So I'm coming at them with that expression, Ted's just being funny. If I crossed a line,
Hmm.
my expectation is that particular person
Hmm.
should say to Ted, Ted, you know what? I know you thought that was funny, but I didn't take it that way.
Hmm.
Then Ted, according to my model, would say, I am really sorry. I had no intent to offend.
Hmm.
Our problem today is everybody else in that circle sitting around is now perpetuating that. Ah, Ted, that was stupid. Oh, Ted, and they're the ones who are offended, not the person I directed my humorous comment at.
Hmm.
But that's none of their business.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So is it fair to say that our collective illusion that what our society expects of us, in many ways, I have internalized it without cross examination. That oldest philosophical saying that know thyself, I think we are not at a luxury of not knowing ourselves, because if we don't try to know ourselves, we will not recognize our true self. And if we don't do it, this is what we discussed in the last episode, that I try to numb my pain of not being my true self, either distracting myself with too much work, or by the end of the day, go to a bar, buy alcohol, or sedate my gnawing self inside telling me that you're not being you.
Yeah, what I also do in some
Mhm.
of our modules is self
Mhm.
examination.
Mhm.
Very important. So, examining what makes you, why do I do what I do? What makes you angry? Why am I angry? I know myself what triggers me.
Mhm.
So, I do my best to stay away from those triggers.
Mhm.
What I've also learned though in my old age is that instead of when I get triggered, instead of lashing out at the person who did the triggering,
Mhm.
I go, is this worth getting involved in? So the self examination, is this the hill you want to die on? Of course, is another term. So, you know, no, no, that's a stupid person. I can't fix them. That's what they believe. Okay, Ted, let it go. Or, no, I need to make a comment now. But the comment is based on the model, respectfully, directly, and honestly, telling that person how they affected me, not what they're doing wrong. Because the minute I tell them what they're doing wrong, we're now in real conflict,
Mhm.
right? I was with an American last week, and we were just talking, and he said, "Yeah," he said, "our country's really messed up, and we have to get rid of all these Democrats." Well, now I knew who he was, and then, but I didn't say, "Oh, really? You're one of them?" I just said, "Oh," and then he says, "Yeah, in your country, you got to get rid of Trudeau. He's a communist, and he's trying to make your country communist." Now, right away, we could have gotten into a real fight there. So I said to him, I said, well, I've been a capitalist all my life because I've been self employed for 50 years. And I said, I think you're getting misinformation. Trudeau is not trying to turn our country communistic, and I'm a very big fan of his. He just looked at me, and then we changed the conversation. So the key is I'm 100% in control on how I act and react without being controlling. My job wasn't to convince him that our prime minister was not a communist. My job was just to say, you know what? You might want to tread softly there because I am a fan of his.
So I will push you back on there. First of all, when you're saying that you have been a capitalist all your life, I will tell you, let us examine that. Um, you can say that in the conventional sense that you have been self-employed for the past 50 years. Yes, that is right. That is right. But I'll give you the most basic analysis, overtly simplified analysis of capitalistic mode of production. It is this: capitalism cannot work without creating conflict. How
Okay.
so? So the
Yeah.
fancy word for it, the Marxist analysis, the dialectical means this: dialectical social relation. How so? You have the owner class and you have the labor class. The owner class can make more money by exploiting the labor class. So the owner class have to forever squeeze the labor class more and more to expand theirs more and more. Now let us go prior to the capitalistic society when we had capitalism didn't arrive. Those societies are based on moral economy. What does it mean? In that society, what did they value to be their organizing principle? You will find a lot of the societies, relationality was their value, mode of operation. So they organized their society based on relationality. So you see, whatever. So let's say in one society, raiding was a value. So they organized the society based on like who can go and raid. Okay, but what capitalism did, it replaced our value. How so? Capitalism, we internalized that my sense of self is attached to things that I own. I have a fancy car. I have a powerful position. I have a lot of reputation, right? But if you really examine, I was telling you about Herbert Marcuse. Marcuse warned us that the real danger of capitalism is that it makes people conforming, like it conforms to an ideal that you got to consume more, you got to buy more, you got to own more, right? Because if you don't buy into that conforming consumer attitude, you will not end up even exploiting yourself. You're working 9 to 5, you are exploiting yourself. So
So
you, yeah, go on.
yeah. So okay, I'm going to push
Mm.
back.
Yeah, yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Mm.
because I've also been introduced as a true entrepreneur because I
Right,
have been self-employed.
yeah.
So maybe I'm incorrectly using the concept of capitalism, but
Mhm.
the point being is, like I said before, I've written about capitalism with a heart because
Mhm.
if we get back to your relationship or the concept
Law
of
of cooperative action, relationality.
relationality, law of cooperative action,
Mhm,
my belief is
mhm,
someone who I was using the term capitalist,
mhm,
but someone who runs a business like I have
mhm,
been,
mhm,
if you treat your people well,
mhm,
if you pay them well, if you treat them well, if you raise up their standard of living, they will go to the wall for you. They will work those extra hours. They will. So I do believe that a really wise entrepreneur will take his people and I'll use your terminology, exploit them, but exploit them to their own benefit
mhm,
because he will always treat them well. Like, for example, someone I was talking to someone the other day who was in business, and he was talking about the old way and the new way. So, um, boss, I'm getting a washer dryer delivered. They don't know when they're going to deliver it, so I'm going to take one of my holiday days so I can be home. The boss says, my type of boss says, no, look it, go home and do it. It's important to you. Go home and do it without penalty or anything like that. So I'll still stick with capitalism with a heart. Now, whether or not that,
So I think here the terminologies. I know that because of our friendship, that because we love each other and care each other, we know we have each other's trust. Because um, I think you growing up and living in Canada, I know that you support universal healthcare.
yes,
I know that you, and it's embedded in your model. In your model, you say non-negotiably, do no harm. So what you say, if you go into the academic literature, your attitude is towards a socialist idea of a society where you treat people with dignity, with respect.
right,
But when you say capitalism, capitalism has only one religion, only one value. That is,
profit,
you maximize profit,
profit.
nothing, nothing matters.
So
That's
how do
not,
so
yeah.
how do you get the philanthropic
Mm,
businesses, the
mm,
people who
mm,
there's facts behind that that
yeah,
have raised
mhm,
societies,
mhm,
you know,
mhm,
put up the
mhm.
library,
Right.
you know, paid for,
Mm,
given millions and millions back to their
mm,
workers, to
mhm,
society and everything. Even though maybe
mhm.
their ultimate goal is, if I do this, they're going to like me more and buy more of my product, and therefore, I mean, I know that, but aren't we
So,
all? But aren't we
when
all? Aren't we all prostitutes? Come on.
so
What-
here's the thing, Ted. So some people have already named it, some scholars, they call it philanthropic capitalism. Philanthrocapitalism. What does it mean? Bill Gates would go to India, will tell you, look, guys, I'm gonna vaccinate 10 million of your children, which we desperately need. Yes, if we don't get vaccine, measles, chickenpox, we need it, right? So when Bill Gates will go to a country like India and will buy vaccines for 10 million people, government will give him a seat at the table, right? And then Gates said, okay, now I'm going to need your tech infrastructure for expanding Microsoft, right? So you, as a purely curious individual, you will question, okay, what is Bill Gates giving? Of course, he's giving. There's no doubt about it. He is helping people to be vaccinated that the government hasn't vaccinated. Good, thank you. He's giving nuts and he's getting this chunk. And by the way, these are not fictional number. You can
No,
see that what revenue. So when Jeff Bezos go to India and wears the Indian outfit, and he's trying to be a brown man, I get it. I get it. So, but the thing is, for the same Jeff Bezos in his company, in his warehouses, people don't get pee break. They pee in the Coke bottles. And it's evidence like again and again and again. You see what I mean?
but
But
that's
you,
wrong. See, that's against my model. It's wrong. If
right.
Jeff Bezos, like,
Yeah,
that's trying to suck and blow at the same time. I
that's
mean,
right.
if you're going to be truly a philanthropic capitalist,
Right.
truly,
Right.
then what you do is you give back there, but
Yeah.
you also make sure your workers are taken
Mm,
care of.
right.
You know,
So the,
unions only react to bad management.
agreed. So the same example is, I'm not only giving example of Jeff Bezos. Think about Apple. It charges prime price. But where are those goods are produced? In China. Look at the abuse of labor. Think about the electric cars like Elon Musk's, Tesla, right? Where do you get these batteries? Go to those countries where the cobalt is mined and see what is happening to the
Yeah.
environment.
Well,
So,
again, I'm not saying you're wrong
yeah,
in
yeah,
your definition, or you're
yeah,
wrong how a lot of capitalists, like I said earlier,
yeah,
$29 million for the CEO of GM. That's a
yeah.
lot of money to make every year. You
That's
know,
right. That's
for
right.
what?
And but this is the thing. Democracy. Democracy is a model. So there was an expression in the founders of democracy, the Greek thinkers, the places where it came from, where it was born. They named a term. It's called kleikops. Means after every certain time, democracy risks the run of collapsing.
Yeah,
Right? And what the founders of democracy in Greece, they said that it requires uh, vigilant thinkers. That okay, what is happening in the society that is risking democracy? In the Greek society, if somebody grew too fat out of the proportion in terms of the wealth, that person used to be ousted, ostracized because they have taken too much. You have taken too much. So democratic society made it sure that okay, you can grow big, but not too big. What is happening now? You have a world economic system where in every 4 seconds, one human being is dying, not because of natural disaster, but because of income inequality.
that's right.
Every year, you see the Oxfam report of inequality. 1 year's report is more disgusting than the past years. So when you say, and again, coming to the fact, the true self, when is the true self? Our true self requires compassion, care, empathy, love, respect. And if I get into a life that does not respect that, and that's why in Buddhist principle, they say that, okay, are you being your true self? Are you doing a job that honors your true self? When I hear your law of cooperative action, your model, when I see your mental model, I don't see that you are going to do things that is going to harm children. I don't see that you would be an entrepreneur where they're extracting cobalt at the expense of the natural disaster. You're not doing that.
No, I can't.
So you can't. Ted needed to find out Ted. Not an easy thing. Why is it so difficult in 2023 for somebody to find out who they are?
Because I think there isn't an awareness or an awakening
Hmm.
to the fact that we can be an alternative to what we believe we are supposed to be,
Hmm.
whatever that is.
Hmm.
And society puts heavy, heavy burdens on us
Hmm.
to conform, as we've said at the beginning of this segment.
Hmm.
And the hard part is learning that you can take that one step off the cliff and you're not going to die.
Hmm.
And but you have to also do it at the right time. I think timing is very important.
Hmm.
Um, I've said this before. You know, our it's okay for a man in 2020 or a woman in 2023 to dress like a man
Hmm.
because of the patriarchy.
Hmm.
She can come up to our standard, but
Hmm.
how dare you and I walk around in a dress
Hmm.
in Canada or the United States, even
Hmm.
though in your country
Hmm.
wearing a I don't know what you call it. It's not a dress, but wear a skirt. You know, it's
Hmm.
fine. It's
Hmm.
fine. And so I think through that concept of the tipping point I talked about, the more people do it, the more people do it. But yet, the 2% keep trying to suppress it
Hmm.
because they're afraid that they're going to lose the power and the ability to control the others.
Yeah. So you have lived the longest in Canada. Tell me, please, based on your personal experiences, personal direct experiences, what are some of the attributes that you see among Canadians in 2023 that you think can risk to two things? A, failing to be to their true self, and how it can pose a risk to our collective democracy.
Do you want to do that now or in the next episode?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Ted. Thank you so much. So, Ted and I are going to discuss. I've been living in this country for 9 years, 10 running, and Ted was a little bit more than 10 years. So, we will discuss in the next episode that what are some of the factors that is contributing towards being our true self, and and I want to put a hypothesis. When we can be our true self, we contribute to our collective good.
100%.
So by not being my true self, I not only jeopardize my well-being, I jeopardize well-being of people around me. When I'm not my true self, I am unhappy with myself. I'm going to be mean to my kids. I'm going to be mean towards my partners, people around me. So yeah. So thank you, Ted, and our audience. Until our next episode, have a great time. See you soon. Bye.